Can't sing a song like that and not pause just to ask, how's it going with your soul? I mean, is it well? When you think of the fears, the frustrations, the thoughts about the future, how are you doing? Song's really powerful, but the story behind it might be more powerful. It was first sung in 1876. It was written by Horatio Spafford. He was an attorney that did well in investments in Chicago. He was a close personal friend of a guy named D.L. Moody, who was an evangelist of an earlier century. In 1871, there was a fire in Chicago. It's called the Great Chicago Fire. And he lost almost all of his holdings, all of investments. So any of you that have ever gone broke, that's where he was. In 1873, there was another economic downturn. At the same time, his 4-year-old son contracted scarlet fever and died. He was, obviously, his son is gone, the better part of his resources, and as he's begun to build his life up again, he just felt like, we need to pause for a moment. He said to his wife, and he had 4 daughters, I want you to get on the ship, we'll all go together, let's get a couple months away to get perspective in Europe. I was just ready to get on the ship, and there was a zoning problem with some property, and so he had to stay behind for a few days. He says, I'll catch the next ship. It is now a famous telegraph. The ship with his wife and his 4 daughters was hit by another ship at sea. It went down, and he received from his wife a telegram that says, saved alone. All 4 of his daughters died in that shipwreck. Very few weeks later, he was on a second ship to meet his wife. And when he came to the place where the 2 ships collided, the captain brought him and said, this is about the place where you lost your daughters. And the words that we sang earlier is as he looked out over the ocean with the Spirit of God speaking into the deepest parts of his hurt and his pain and his loss, he said, when peace like a river, it's well with my soul. Like sea billows roll, it is well with my soul. And I don't know about you, but it seems humanly impossible to lose a son, lose everything financially, lose 4 of your daughters, and to honestly and sincerely say, it is well with your soul. And yet, if you'll notice on the front of your teaching handout, that is exactly what Jesus promised his early disciples, and Horatio Spafford is just one person among millions over the last couple millennia have experienced the Spirit of God to do something inside of them that is beyond any human understanding. The last night, Jesus with his disciples said to them, I have told you these things so in me that you might have peace. In the world you'll have trouble, tribulations, but take heart, I've overcome the world. This isn't theory here. We've had 10 memorial services in the last 30 days in our church. There's people all around you that lost a mom, a dad, a grandpa, a child. I prayed last night with a man who found out earlier in the week that his biopsy was positive and he has lymphoma, and he's now on the journey of, okay, Lord, what's it look like to have peace in the midst of this, as his wife poured out her heart in tears. And that's not unique. Everyone in this room, right? We have our issues. But we can choose peace. But how do you choose peace in moments of extraordinary anxiety? That's what we're going to learn. As we do, sometimes you have to learn a little bit about the problem before you can solve it. So let's do a little research together. What exactly is anxiety? A textbook definition, it's an emotional characterized by uneasiness, apprehension, dread, concern, tension, restlessness, and worry. The anxious individual often anticipates misfortune, danger, or doom. We don't need that definition. That kind of describes where a lot of us are multiple times a week at times. The biblical word for anxiety literally means to take thought, It can be used in a positive way, like taking thought for something positively, but mostly it's used in the New Testament for taking thought as being obsessed with something. You can't get your mind off of it. The German word comes from the word to choke or to strangle, and anxiety at its heart has the idea inside your mind of being pulled in two different directions. Jesus would teach that there's a number of things that choke out life in a believer's life. And he says that it's like a seed falling into the seed of a human heart, and yet the thorns grow up and it chokes out, and the thorns are the pleasures of this world, the desires for other things, and worry or anxiety. And so that's kind of a definition. What makes us anxious or causes it is fear of the future. This is probably the most common one. Fear of failure, fear of another terrorist attack, fear of an economic downturn, fear that your kids won't turn out right, fear you'll be single the rest of your life, fear that the marriage that you're in is never going to get any better, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, you name it. For others, anxiety is produced by conflict in the present. Conflict in your marriage, conflict with a friend, conflict at work, conflict with a neighbor, conflict with one of your kids, conflict with your in-laws. The third cause for anxiety is in the past, regret. There's times when things are just going well and you're just driving in your car and out of the blue, you remember, oh my, what you did back then that you hope no one ever finds out, and it plays a tape. Or for some of us, we came to know Christ later in life and we made some mistakes, and there's issues with some of our kids or some things about our life that we can't change, and we just start getting overwhelmed with, I blew it, and it produces this anxiety. Anxiety isn't just a little thing to take a pill. Anxiety can ruin your life. I have a friend who's a professor, a medical doctor, and he wrote a textbook on psychological disorders. Here's a list of things that anxiety produces in us mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Makes people hyper alert, irritable, fidgety, overdependent, insomnia, talkative, poor memory, fainting episodes, frequent urination, gets a little graphic. Excessive perspiration, muscle tension, headaches, including migraines, quivering voice, hyperventilation, abdominal pain, nausea, diarrhea, high blood pressure, and impotence. I don't know about you, but that list alone tells me I don't know how to get rid of anxiety, but I want to get rid of it in a hurry, right? So that's the issue. How do you overcome anxiety? There's many of you this last week, you woke up at 2:11 and then 3:05 or 4:07, and you're thinking about the future, and your mind, it goes over and over and over again, and you're very fearful about something, or you're in conflict with someone, and the stomach acid is going around. And how does that change? That's what we're going to learn. Open your notes. I want to tell you that you simply do not have to live as an anxious person. It is possible to absolutely be at peace in the midst of horrendous, difficult, and uncertain times. Jesus promised it. My peace I give to you. You might jot on the very top of your notes, 1 Peter 5:7. Peter would make a command and he would say, cast all your burdens upon the Lord because he cares for you. And the burdens are cares. It's the picture of like a 9 or 10-year-old boy coming home on Friday, and he's got his backpack, and he takes his backpack and he throws it to the corner and goes, wow, no homework. Weekend. Literally. And you know what? He doesn't go and go, oh, I wonder if I've got something due later. Or he's 8 years old. He just takes it off. There's no homework. Man, it's going to be fun. That's the picture of casting all your burdens on the Lord. Why? He really cares for you. You give your problems, your struggles, and anxiety to a personal God who is in control, who's all-wise, who's loving, who's powerful, and you're the object of his affection. And in Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 and 7, he will give you a specific game plan that every time anxiety comes and knocks on the door of your heart, this game plan will teach you that prayer can answer the door, and you can run into your Father's arms, and God will give peace. You're going to learn that every time anxiety knocks on the door of your heart, that you literally can Let prayer answer it, and then run into your Father's arms. You're going to learn. Do I need to say it again? I want you to read the text silently as I read it out loud. Command, do not be anxious about anything. Second command, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Promise, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Now, if you're a little bit new, we study the Bible together, and so one of the questions we always ask before we make application is, what does it actually say? And by that, you need to make some observations. The Word of God is living and active, sharper than a two-edged sword, and it's truth. The second question is, after what does it say? Well, what does it actually mean? What did it mean to its first century hearers, and what does it mean to us? And then the last question that's most important is, so God, what do you want me to do? How do I put this into practice? So often, at least when I study, I will outline the text, what I've laid out here for, I call it a mechanical outline. Just like when you study a poem or study Shakespeare and you want to grammatically see what's happening in it. So what I've done is I've taken it in the original language and I've just literally put it in order so you can see the grammar. You don't need to know the original language, but in this particular case, it's interesting that he takes a word completely out of order to make his point. So notice, just when I lay it, the first command is nothing be anxious about. If you have a pen, put a little arrow and write negative command in your notes. In other words, we're commanded, literally, it's stop being anxious. Stop worrying. It's not just a little thing. It eats up your soul. It ruins your emotions. It thwarts your relationships. It chokes the life out of you. Stop worrying. And if it's a command, that means there's got to be power and a way to obey this command. Notice the positive command. But in everything, he's going to give us 4 specific words for prayer. After the everything, put an arrow and put positive command. In everything, by prayer, petition, with thanksgiving, the request of you be made known unto God. There are 4 words in the New Testament for prayer. All 4 of them are right here. Here's what I want you to know. When anxiety knocks on the door of your heart, let prayer answer it, but not just any kind of prayer. He's going to give you a very clear, using all 4 words, there's a specific way to pray that when you're anxious, when you're fearful, when the stomach acid starts, when you are awake and can't fall back to sleep, when you have these scenarios where you're projecting into the future how terrible and what's going to happen, and at your job, and your kids aren't going to turn out right, and this is going to happen, and your marriage will never get better, and this thing at work is never going to change, and the health issue is always going to go from bad to worse. Once you start down that track, there's a kind and there's a way to pray that the Spirit of God will go, hush. In fact, notice what the promise is. The promise is that when you pray, petition with thanksgiving, and you make your requests known to God, the peace of God that's beyond human understanding will guard your heart and your thoughts, or literally your minds. Circle the word guard. If you've ever seen a documentary or ever had the privilege of going to London and, the guys with the tall hat in front of Buckingham Palace, right? They're sentries. They're a sentry. In other words, they're on guard. Or if you've ever seen the little commercial, I like this commercial. It's the one where the guy's in the bank and the robbers come in and everyone's on the floor and the lady looks up and says, do something. He goes, I'm not a security guard, I'm a security monitor. I'm just monitoring. There's a problem here. That's this word. He says, when you pray like this, the Spirit of God that gives you a sense of peace and calm will literally guard the deepest parts of your life and your thinking. And in fact, what we're going to learn is there's times when you lose your peace, when you realize there's something wrong, that actually it's like the red light on the dashboard of the car. And what it tells you is that there's something wrong under the hood. When you lose your peace, there's something about your abiding in Christ. Your focus, your mind, your trust is off of Christ and onto something else. And your loss of peace is like, and it says he'll act as like an arbitrator, a monitor, so that you can get back in line. With that, let's get to the application. Negatively, there's a command. We've looked at them negatively and positively. You'll notice there's 4 key words, that it's the how, and there's the promise, which is the why. In your notes where it says negatively, I would like you to write, stop worrying about anything. Part of how our minds work, we see it, we say it, we write it, it sticks. I just saw a study by Harvard University recently that talked about those graduates that actually wrote down their goals were 80% more likely to succeed. I want you to write down, stop worrying. Don't just sit here and listen. You're not passive. This is about your life today, in this moment. Second, where it says positive command, I want you to write, pray about everything. Because here's the thing, some of us have practiced being anxious most of our lives. We learned it from our parents. Almost everyone does it. We think that what you do, when you worry is you take a pill for this, a pill for that. When you feel uptight, we'll turn on the TV, binge on Netflix. For others, when you lose your peace, you go shopping. For others, it's been really tough and you're uptight about things and you wonder, and so, 1 glass of wine made you feel a little bit better and about 3 makes you feel a lot better. Some of you had a prescription for some back pain, and when you get uptight now, you actually take some of those pills even though your back pain was months ago gone and better. For others, some of us, it's maybe a little bit more healthy. You just work. The moment you feel anxious, you just start working because you feel like you're in control. At the heart of anxiety is life is out of control and I can't handle this, so you do something that gives you pseudo peace. For many of us, it's just a trip to the refrigerator when we're not really in need of calories. But there's something about a bag of chips, a bag of popcorn, some chocolate that just makes you feel better for what? Right? 15 to 30 minutes. There's all kind of ways that we address our anxiety. Most of them aren't very helpful. And then when we do a lot of those things, some of you log on and surf, some of you spend mindless hours, not because you want to or need to, clicking on Facebook and posting on Instagram, because it's just a distraction. Is there something wrong inherently with doing some of those things? Absolutely not. But when I'm doing that, because what I'm really trying to do is get my mind off of this gnawing anxiety, you're not letting the peace of Christ rule in your heart and in your mind. I mean, my confession is, my anxiety, ESPN. Somehow watching other people play games makes me feel better for a half hour, or get into my work, or go work out. Bad? Evil? I don't think so. But when I do it, instead of letting prayer answer the door and let God work in my life, my heart, neither wise nor profitable. Now, what I want you to see is that prayer answers the door, but it's a very specific kind of prayer. Like you, I have lots of challenges with anxiety. I think we all do, especially living in this valley at this time in world history. And I think God would say, okay, I want to teach you a way to pray. Because I felt very anxious and, oh, God, help, God. And then I just pick up the backpack and put the burdens right back on. So I want to walk through these 4 specific words. You practice this, and you do not have to be anxious. The first word is prayer. It's the most common word of the New Testament in prayer. It has the idea of turning, in the moment you feel anxious, it's turning my thoughts and my feelings upward. It's getting an upward focus. It's adoration. It's pausing and recognizing, wait a second, in the midst of these struggles right now, I want to get my focus on who is God. Worship. I actually have more than a few struggles with anxiety. I tend to juggle a few more balls than I can really juggle, trying to accomplish more than I'm really capable of. And as a result of that, I don't know about you, but you can wake up, and if you wake up, and as you're waking up, the first thoughts in your mind is, what about this, and what about that meeting, and what about this, and one of my kids over here. And then if you get up out of bed, wash your face, and if you pick up your phone, oh my gosh, Dow's down 77 points, and I'll just check my email while I'm walking to make coffee. Oh my gosh, you know what you're setting yourself up for? Disaster. The first thing you need to do in the morning, Every morning, either Psalm 23 or the Lord's Prayer, before I get out of bed, I realize, God, if I don't see life through your lens, I'm going to be in trouble. Because I know this life is going to bring more challenges, just the ones I know about. They're more than I can handle. And it's interesting, when Jesus taught his disciples to pray, what did he say? When you pray, say, Our Father. Oh. So in the midst of all the craziness of the world, the one who created all that there is, the one who sent his son to die for you and rise from the dead, the one who's the sovereign king, who's all wise, all powerful, and all knowing of every circumstance, real, possible, and potential, he's your Papa. And say to him, who art in heaven. You're not in the mix of all this. You're not pulled into this or that. You're the creator. You're in control. Holy is your name. I can know 100% of the time that God will never lie to me. God's always going to be pure. His intentions. So it's this moment where you pause and you get a high, clear view of God. When anxiety knocks at the door of your heart, let prayer answer it. And the first prayer is worship and adoration. So I have a habit. As I'm laying in bed, I either pray slowly through Psalm 23 or the Lord's Prayer or parts of it. And then I don't look at my phone. I don't check my email. I have coffee already made because that's a very important part of my early morning. And the dog and I are friends, so I let the dog out. And every morning I do something. I'm always disappointed. I mean, I know we need rain. I'm good for rain, and clouds are great. But every morning I take my cup of coffee, and my dog's out running around, and I stand in my patio like I did this morning, and I look up and I see these stars. And I force myself out loud, Almighty, ever-living Creator, little people like me have stared at the sky for thousands and thousands of years, and you created him, and this is just the Milky Way. There's 100, maybe 200 billion stars in this little galaxy, and they didn't know there's another couple 100 billion galaxies. And the one that placed these in the sky at this moment on this day, I am the object of your affection. I don't know how to pull off or what's going to happen. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to talk to you and read what you want to say to me. But I'm going with you, the creator of the world, at my back. Here's what I can tell you. As you get a really big God, you will get really small problems. If you have really big problems, you have a very small God. See, what happens, take thought of, it means to focus on, get obsessed with. Okay, here's a problem. Okay, maybe 85% or 90% of your marriage is pretty good. Or at work, you really do have a good job, but there's a supervisor. Or maybe, you're single, but you have some really good friends. But whatever the part that really makes you anxious or there's uncertainty, here's what you do. You focus on it, you focus on it, you focus on it, you focus on it, you focus on it. And pretty soon, you look at all of life through this anxiety. And then as you look at all in life, the way we're made is then your emotions and your physiology begin to respond. And then your body and your world gets messed up because you think this is the world. He says, when anxiety knocks at the door of your heart, let prayer answer it. And the first thing you do, this is the God that can deal with that. You think God can heal someone of cancer? We've seen it. You think God can give people grace to go through cancer? You think God can actually take someone that you love to heaven and you recover from it and be okay knowing you're going to see them later? You bet. You think God can give you a new job if you don't have it? You think God can get into the heart of one of your kids that's not walking with God? Do you think God can? Of course he can. Intellectually you believe that, but it doesn't experience it until you worship him. Put a little A, the left of where it says prayer, and circle it, and I'll tell you why later. The second is petition. This is the second most common word in the New Testament. It's focusing on your need. It's a prayer that expresses my need or my want before I ask. It's a sense that it's the awareness that I am unable, that I have limitations in this situation, that I need you, God. I can't handle this. Much of anxiety is about, here's a problem or here's an issue, and the resource you unconsciously look to is, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? How do I fix it? How do I fix it? And the more it's overwhelming or the more it's out of your control and the more you realize you can't fix it, guess what happens? It just grows and grows and grows. And so the kind of prayer that answers the door when anxiety knocks and causes you to run to your Father is first adoration, and this is confession. God, I can't handle this. I don't know what to do in this marriage. I've tried everything under the sun. I can't get one of my kids' attention for the life of me. You know what? Unless you transfer my supervisor to Siberia, I don't, he doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. I feel like I can't handle this. Lord, I need you. You know what that is called in Scripture? Humility. Dependency. And you know what? You can't cast your cares on Jesus as long as you're holding on to him and assuming that some way, somehow, my ability, my moxie, my personality, my brains, I'm going to solve this. And so the kind of prayer is first worship and then confession. And you say, you care for me, I can't handle this. And then it positions you to begin to ask him, to really ask him for help.